My family has never been the traveling kind. We're homebodies, happiest inside familiar walls where nothing unexpected can reach us. That's why it shocked everyone when my aunt announced at dinner one evening, "I think we should take a trip to one of Michigan's Great Lakes, all of us, together." We stared at her, confused. My uncle frowned, my mom raised her eyebrows, and my cousins exchanged looks of disbelief. But then she smiled and added, "Come on, we need to make memories before the kids are too old to want to come." Surprisingly, we agreed. My cousin found a massive Airbnb, somehow big enough for 18 of us. The house sat right on the sand, lake water stretching to the horizon like an ocean. When we arrived, we gasped at the sight. It felt like the perfect beginning to something new. Most of us claimed rooms in the main house, but because of our size, a few of us were sent to the second building, a 2-story garage tucked behind the house. That's where I was placed, along with 3 cousins. At first, none of us minded. That changed the moment we stepped inside. The garage was different from the main house, outdated, neglected. The bathrooms were carpeted and smelled of mold. The sheets on the beds were stained, yellowing in places, and the flimsy latch on the door hardly looked secure. "Gross," Nikki muttered, pulling back one of the blankets. "I'm not sleeping on this." "Me neither," Donnie added quickly. "These look like they haven't been washed in years." Maria groaned, dropping her bag on the floor. "Figures we get stuck in the haunted house part of the property." I tried to keep calm. "We'll just wash the sheets. They'll be fine after that." The washer was small, so we had to do one set at a time. We sat upstairs while the first load ran. Maria complained under her breath, "Of course, we get the creepy building. Everyone else is in the nice house." Her words made my stomach tighten. I had that feeling again, the one that crawls under your skin when something bad is about to happen. It's rare, but I know better than to ignore it. "Listen," Tello told them quietly. "Just stay alert tonight, okay? I don't like the way this feels." They fell silent. We'd all been through a break-in before, years ago in Detroit, and none of us had forgotten the helplessness.
At midnight, I went downstairs to switch the laundry. The garage hummed with the sound of the machine. Carrying the warm, clean-smelling sheets upstairs, I tried to shake the unease. "Finally," Nikki said as I came up. "Now maybe I can actually sleep." But the loads dragged on, one after another. By 2:37 a.m., we were exhausted. We made the beds, and my cousins collapsed into sleep immediately. I stayed awake, scrolling on my phone, too restless to close my eyes. I've always been a light sleeper, and tonight the silence pressed down heavy. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., a violent crash slammed against the garage door. I froze. My phone slipped from my hands. The sound wasn't a knock. It wasn't the wind. It was the sound of something huge, like a body, slamming into the door. I held my breath. Upstairs, my cousin slept undisturbed. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing, just wind." But even I didn't believe it. Minutes later, it came again, louder this time. The building shook. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. My heart thudded in my chest as I sat up fully, staring at the door from across the room. When the third crash came 20 minutes later, Danny bolted upright in bed. "What the hell was that?" "I've been hearing it," I said, my voice low. "This is the third time." "That's not the wind," Nikki whispered, her eyes wide. We sat together, whispering frantically, until Nikki finally said, "I'm texting Mom. This isn't normal." By 4:11 a.m., my aunt had answered. Minutes later, my uncle and a few older cousins rushed outside to check. We stayed upstairs, listening, too afraid to move, until heavy knocking rattled the door. "Open up, it's me," my uncle called. We hurried down. He stood there with my dad, faces grim. "There's someone on the property," my uncle said flatly. My stomach dropped. We ran to the main house, clutching our things. Inside, everyone was awake, voices buzzing with panic. I explained what had happened, how the building had shaken with the crashes. Nikki and Danny backed me up immediately. "They're not lying." Nikki said firmly. It was like someone threw themselves against the wall.
My aunt's face was pale. She spoke softly. When I went out with your uncle, we saw him. Who? I asked. A man, she whispered, standing behind the garage, just standing there. Your uncle shouted, but he didn't move. He just stared. My uncle's jaw tightened as he added, and then he disappeared, just walked off. No footsteps, no sound. Gone. No one doubted him. My uncle isn't the type to make up stories. Then my brothers pulled out 2 playing cards, jesters. One found in the main house, the other in the garage. The one from the garage looked twisted, almost demonic. Maria shuddered. That's sick. Jesters mean mockery. He's messing with us. I thought about the timing. The crashes happened around 3, the devil's hour. No one slept after that. The next night gave us more reason to fear. My mom had given up her bed and slept on the couch near the windows. Around 4 a.m., she woke to the sound of footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. I didn't open my eyes, she admitted later. I was too afraid I'd see someone staring back at me. Then, the basement door rattled violently. Someone was trying to get in. The boys were down there. The lock was weak. I ran, but when I got to the door, no one was outside. No prints, nothing. That sealed it. We packed and left a day early. On the drive home, theories circled. You shouldn't have gone downstairs alone, my mom scolded. What if he was watching you, waiting? The timing lines up too perfectly. Maria muttered. Maybe it was just some neighbor trying to scare us off. Then why disappear? Nikki shot back. Why just stare instead of running? That's not normal. And the cards, Danny. What kind of neighbor leaves those? We told the Airbnb host, who promised to check the camera above the garage, but she never got back to us. It made us wonder, did she know him? Was he part of the neighborhood? My sister remembered passing a woman on the beach the first day. She just stared at us, she said. Didn't smile, didn't say hello, just cold. Maybe they didn't want us there. Maybe it was something darker. All I know is that what was meant to be our first family trip together turned into something we still whisper about in hushed voices. Even now, when the clock edges past 3 in the morning, I sometimes hear it again. That crash, that echo, like laughter pressed against the walls.
When I was a teenager, my parents uprooted our lives in California and moved us to a secluded corner of North Idaho. They had just retired, eager to live out their dream in a house they'd designed from the ground up. The place was enormous, 2 stories with a full gym, a bar and pool room, even a theater in the basement. It felt like something out of a magazine. Remote, quiet, perfect. Or so we thought. Back then, I was dating my high school girlfriend. One night, while my parents were on a date downtown, I invited her over. We carried a couple of beers down into the theater and put on Gladiator. For a while, it was normal, comfortable even. But around midnight, an unshakable tension gripped me. It wasn't anything I could explain. My heart began pounding, my palms slick with sweat. The uncovered basement windows loomed across from us, opening onto pitch-black forest. I kept glancing at them, convinced something was out there. I didn't tell her. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I tried to ignore it, even as things between us grew heated. But the entire time, I couldn't shake the suffocating certainty that we were being watched. When the movie ended, I walked her upstairs to her car. The night was silent, the forest stretching endlessly into the dark. After she drove off, I remembered the lights I'd left on downstairs. Sighing, I went back in to turn them off. The theater came first. I flicked the switch, and as the room fell dark, My eyes drifted toward the massive window. That's when I saw him. At first, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. A man, ragged, filthy, his hair wild, stood pressed against the glass. But it was his face that locked me in place. He wore the largest, most deranged grin I'd ever seen, his eyes wide and glassy. In one hand, he held a knife, tapping the tip gently against the window. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought I must be imagining it. Slowly, without daring to run, I edged into the bar room. That room had a sliding glass door that looked out on the same woods. I hit the light switch. He was there. He had moved from the theater window to the glass door, still smiling, still staring. Less than a foot of glass separated us. I couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe. He didn't try to break in. He didn't move at all. He just watched me, knife gleaming under the dim light. I forced myself upstairs, silent and shaking. That's when my parents came through the front door. The words tumbled out of me in a panic. "I think I'm losing my mind. I just saw a guy with a knife outside." My mom's face went pale. My dad didn't hesitate. He opened the gun safe, pulled out his rifle, and stormed outside. As he disappeared into the dark, my mom whispered, "There have been a few break-ins. The man you described, that's the one they've warned about." The police came. They searched, but found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no forced entry. Just endless trees. That night, lying in bed, I heard it. A faint tapping sound, like metal gently brushing glass. My room sat directly above the theater. I lay frozen, listening to the steady, deliberate rhythm. It came back the next night, and the next, always faint, always patient. Sometimes I'd wake at 3 in the morning to hear it again. Once I swore I heard footsteps across the roof. I never saw him, but I knew. He was still out there. Then winter arrived. My parents left town for a few days, their unease lingering. They left me a shotgun for protection. Our Rottweiler, sweetest dog, but a silent sentinel, stayed by my side. He never barked unless there was a real threat. One night, I heard it. Slow, heavy footsteps crunching in the snow outside. The dog stood, ears sharp, then erupted into a frenzy of growls and barks at the front door. My stomach dropped. Then came the knock, slow, hollow, taunting. I didn't move. I didn't answer. That night I sat awake with the shotgun clutched to my chest, blinds drawn, the dog pressed against my leg. Morning came. I stepped outside and froze. Footprints circled the house, human footprints that stopped at every window, pausing as if to peer inside. I followed them into the woods. They weaved and looped in nonsense patterns, like someone wanted to confuse me. Something in my gut screamed to turn back.
That night, the tapping returned, louder this time, insistent. I snapped. Grabbing the shotgun, I stepped onto the second-story deck and flipped on the floodlights. The backyard lit up in harsh white. And there he was, the same man, the same smile, the same knife tapping against his palm. I leveled the gun. My voice cracked as I shouted, "If you don't leave, I'll put one through you." He didn't blink, didn't move, just grinned wider, eyes locked on mine. I fired a warning shot into the air. The crack split the night. Finally, he reacted, stumbling back a few steps. But even as he retreated into the trees, he never broke eye contact. That smile never left his face. Adrenaline took over. I sprinted downstairs, ripped open the sliding door, and unleashed the dog.
He exploded into the forest, a black streak of fury, barking louder than I'd ever heard. The shock collar pulled him back before he got far, but I like to believe he scared the intruder off. Because after that night, the tapping stopped. The grin in the window never returned. But even now, years later, I can still see him when I close my eyes. That smile, that knife, that silence pressing in from the woods.
Let me start with this. I'm not crazy. I know how it's going to sound. Paranoid, unhinged, like the ramblings of someone losing their grip. But I swear, on my life, everything I'm about to tell you really happened. It began with a face, or more accurately with faces. Faces that all seemed normal at first glance, but that carried something off, something underneath. 3 months ago, I ended things with my ex, Caleb. We'd been together nearly 2 years, and the breakup was long overdue. He wasn't violent, not in the way people usually mean. He never hit me. But Caleb was controlling in subtle, corrosive ways. The kind of manipulation that burrows under your skin and makes you question your own memory. He tracked the hours I was online. He'd quiz me about my day, watching carefully to see if I'd give the same answer twice. He had this way of always being present, even when he wasn't in the room. When I finally left, I burned everything down. I changed my number, disabled my social media, and moved across town into a small apartment where no one knew me. I thought I had escaped. For a little while, I believed it. Then came the barista. It was a Tuesday morning, gray skies, spitting drizzle. I ducked into a hole-in-the-wall coffee shop near my new place, a spot I'd only been to once or twice. I was tired, barely awake when I stepped up to the counter. The barista, a girl my age, looked up and smiled. Her eyes were friendly, but her smile froze me in place. "Good morning, sunshine," she said. My blood went cold. That was Caleb's nickname for me. He used it sarcastically whenever I was upset, dragging it out in this mocking sing-song voice. "What's wrong, sunshine?" He liked pushing buttons. I stared at her for a beat too long, then muttered thanks and left with my coffee. I told myself it was a coincidence. It had to be. But coincidences don't repeat themselves. A few days later, I ordered a rideshare to work. The driver was an older man, maybe mid-50s, with kind eyes. At first, he made small talk, weather, traffic, the usual. But then he caught my gaze in the rearview mirror and asked, "Ever figure out what you're running from?" I felt my stomach twist. Those exact words in that exact cadence. Caleb had said them to me once. I told him I needed time to figure myself out, and he leaned close, dead serious. "Ever figure out what you're running from?" I stammered something like, "What?" The driver just chuckled, shook his head, and let the car fall back into silence. I couldn't breathe. And it didn't stop there. A woman at the grocery store bumped into me, leaned close, and whispered, "You don't get to just disappear." A man on the street passed me and muttered, "Still wearing your hair like that." Someone in my building once hummed the exact song Caleb used to play during our arguments and said, "You always like this one." Different faces, different voices, but the same eyes. Eyes that looked at me like they already knew me. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was cracking under stress. Maybe my brain was making connections that weren't there. Still, the dread built until I broke my own rule. I reached out. Not to Caleb directly, but through his sister. I told her to tell him to knock it off. Whatever game he was playing, stalking me, sending people after me, it needed to end. Her reply came the next day. "I don't know what you're talking about. Caleb's in rehab. He's been there 6 weeks, no phone." I didn't believe her. She'd always covered for him before. But then she posted a picture on Facebook a week later. Caleb, pale and thin, clutching a one-day sober chip. He looked wrecked, hollowed out. So if it wasn't Caleb, then who? That night, I stayed late at work, avoiding my apartment. At 10, I finally gave up and walked home. My headphones were in, but no music played, a trick I'd learned to keep one step ahead. When I turned onto my block, I saw him, a figure sitting on the stoop across from my building, hood up, head bent. "Cold out tonight, huh, sunshine?" he said. My feet rooted to the pavement. He didn't look at me, he just spoke to the sidewalk. I forced myself forward, past him, up to my building, up the stairs, into my apartment. I locked every bolt, sat frozen on the couch, listening for hours. By morning, my front doormat was flipped over. On the underside, scrawled in shaky pen, were the words, "You can change your face too if you want, but I'll still recognize you." I threw up. That day, I booked a hotel downtown. I didn't pack, I didn't dare. I just wanted to vanish into a crowd. The room was small, stuffy, but safe, or so I thought. At 2 a.m., 3 slow knocks rattled the door. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. Another 3. I crept to the peephole. A woman stood there, mid-40s, face blank. She didn't speak, she didn't move, just stared at my door as if she could see through it. I held my breath until she left. The next morning, I asked the front desk about it. They swore no one had been on my floor. Every room up there was vacant. That's when it clicked. These weren't random people. They weren't coincidences. They were being sent. Said details. Fed his words.
But Caleb was locked away. So who? I thought back to something he'd once mentioned offhand, a forum he was part of. He framed it as productivity talk, a place where people shared strategies. At the time, I didn't pay much attention. Now, in hindsight, it sounded like something darker, cult-like, role play, but cruel. What if he'd shared me there? What if they'd taken me on as some kind of project, parroting his phrases, haunting me through strangers' mouths? It wasn't stalking in the normal sense. It was psychological graffiti, spraying his presence across the world around me until I could never escape. I moved again, changed my hair, deleted what little digital trail I had left. For a short while, the silence held. Until last week. I was walking home from a bookstore when a woman brushed past me. She didn't stop. She didn't look at me. But as she passed, she said, "Still hiding behind books, sunshine," and kept walking. That's when I understood. This will never stop. Maybe he paid people. Maybe he made it public. Maybe it's a game now, some underground challenge. Who can scare Sunshine the best? Who can get the closest without breaking the law? It's not about watching me. It's about making sure I never stop watching for him. And the worst part? I can't trust anyone's face anymore. Not the barista, not the driver, not the stranger on the sidewalk, not the woman at my hotel door. Every face could be his, hidden beneath the surface. Every smile could be borrowed from him. And every time I hear that word, sunshine, my heart stops. Because I know it isn't over. It never will be.